The world no longer looked like home. Oran Sal stood at the curved observation deck of the Sanctum of Stars, gazing out at the swirling atmospheric deserts of Eloria. Massive clouds of ionized gas twisted across the horizon in vibrant shades of amber and violet, a stark contrast to the fading memories of Earth's blue skies. 35 years after humanity's great exodus, and still the alien landscapes felt like a dream, sometimes beautiful, often unsettling. Eloria had become humanity's reluctant sanctuary after Earth's ecological collapse. The planet existed in a delicate balance of 7 intelligent species, united under the Interstellar Covenant, a fragile peace maintained more through necessity than genuine harmony. As an ex-military officer dishonorably discharged after the Meridian conflict, Oran had retreated to this remote outpost seeking absolution, or at least oblivion. "Still chasing ghosts, Commander?" The voice came from behind him, carrying the familiar melodic accent of the Cyril people, one of Eloria's native species. Oran didn't turn. "Not a commander anymore, Keelan, you know that." Keelan Voss, a pilot from his former squadron and one of the few who still acknowledged him, moved to stand beside him. The Sanctum of Stars was a refuge for those seeking escape, ex-soldiers, scientists, diplomats from various species, all drawn to this isolated outpost on Eloria's outer territories. The perfect place for a man with a fractured honor to disappear. "Perimeter patrol in 20 minutes, Keelan said. "You're on the roster." Oran raised an eyebrow. "Thought I was off rotation this cycle." "Marcella's down with the atmospheric fever. You're her replacement." Keelan's expression softened slightly. "Besides, might do you good to get out there. You've been brooding in here for days." Oran nodded reluctantly. The routine patrols around the Sanctum's perimeter were usually uneventful, monitoring the ever-shifting plasma storms, checking for damaged atmospheric shields, occasionally intercepting curious wildlife. Not the purpose he'd once found in military service, but purpose nonetheless. "I'll be at the hangar in 15, he said. As Keelan departed, Oran's gaze lingered on his own reflection in the viewing glass. At 43, his once military bearing remained intact despite his best efforts to shed it. Dark hair now streaked with premature silver, eyes that had seen too much combat still sharp despite the weariness behind them. The scar across his right cheek, a reminder of the Meridian mission, the decision that had cost him everything. He turned away from the window, from the memories, and headed toward his quarters to prepare. The patrol skimmer hummed as it cut through the thin upper atmosphere of Eloria's borderlands. Oran piloted with practiced precision, while Keelan monitored the sensor arrays and their third member, Dax Lauren, a young Terran biologist, cataloged atmospheric samples. The three flew in comfortable silence, each lost in their own thoughts as they traced the established perimeter route. "Picking up something on the long-range sensors," Keelan suddenly announced, breaking the quiet. "Metallic signature, roughly 2 kilometers east of waypoint 7. Oran adjusted their course. "Natural formation." "Negative. Looks manufactured. Could be debris from the orbital platforms, or—" Keelan paused, recalibrating the sensors. "Wait, I'm reading energy fluctuations. Faint, but definitely active." "Covenant vessel?" Dax asked, looking up from her samples. "Unknown configuration," Keelan replied, "not matching any registry patterns." Oran felt a familiar tension rising in his chest, the combat readiness he'd tried to leave behind. "Alert the Sanctum. We're going to investigate." As they approached the coordinates, the unidentified object came into view, a sleek vessel of unfamiliar design, its hull gleaming with an iridescent material that seemed to shift colors with the atmospheric currents. The craft had clearly crash-landed, leaving a long gouge in the rocky terrain, but remained largely intact. No identifiable markings, Keelan observed as they circled cautiously. Definitely not Covenant technology. Could be from beyond the settled systems. Life signs, Oron asked, bringing the skimmer down a safe distance from the wreckage. Keelan checked the readings. One, very faint, could be interference. Oron made his decision quickly. Dax, stay with the skimmer. Keep communication open with the Sanctum. Keelan, you're with me. They donned their atmospheric suits and approached the crashed vessel cautiously, up close. The ship's design became even more perplexing. Organic curves melded seamlessly with crystalline structures. Technology unlike anything Oron had encountered in his military career. There, Keelan pointed toward what appeared to be a breach in the hull. Entry point. Oron nodded, drawing his sidearm, standard procedure, though he hoped it wouldn't be necessary. They made their way through the ruptured opening, into the dim interior of the vessel. The air inside was breathable but thick with an unfamiliar scent, something like ozone mixed with spices. The ship's internal layout defied conventional design. Instead of distinct compartments, the space flowed in continuous curves, with control interfaces that seemed to hover between solid and liquid states. But it was what they found at the ship's core that stopped them both in their tracks. A cradle-like structure pulsed with soft blue light, and within it lay a small form, unmistakably an infant, but clearly not human or any known Covenant species. The child's skin had a translucent quality, with faint luminescent patterns flowing beneath the surface like constellations. Its features were delicate, almost elfin, with large, almond-shaped eyes currently closed in what appeared to be sleep or unconsciousness. By the stars, Keelan whispered. What is it? Before Oron could respond, a faint sound caught his attention, a whisper of movement from outside the ship. Combat instincts flaring, he turned just as a figure materialized from the shadows near the breach. Tall and lithe, with skin bearing the same translucent quality as the infant's, but marked with more complex patterns. The figure wore what appeared to be ceremonial robes. Female, Oron guessed, though with alien species it was sometimes difficult to tell. Her eyes, entirely silver without visible pupils, widened at the sight of them. Vera kai nasoth mel. She spoke in a language Auron's translator couldn't process. Her voice carried a musical quality despite the obvious distress in her tone. She gestured urgently toward the infant, then toward the sky. I think she's trying to warn us about something, Keelan said. The alien woman moved closer to the cradle, her movements betraying injury. A dark liquid that might have been blood seeped from her side. She placed a hand on the infant, then looked directly at Auron with an intensity that seemed to pierce through him. Elara, she said, pointing to the child. Elara. Then she pressed her hand to her own chest. Velari, Gilor. Valari, Auron repeated, understanding this was her name. Xylor, perhaps her species or clan. He touched his own chest. Auron, human. A sudden explosion rocked the ship, sending them all staggering. Through the breach, Auron could see dark shapes moving against the landscape. Humanoid, but wrong somehow. Their movements too fluid, too predatory. Shadow Core, Valari hissed, a word his translator somehow recognized. She gestured frantically at the infant, Elara, then at Auron, speaking rapidly in her language. Another explosion, closer this time. The ship groaned around them. We need to move, Auron decided. Keelan, get back to the skimmer. Power up. I'll bring them. You don't know who or what they are, Keelan protested. They're in danger, Auron replied simply. That's all I need to know. As Keelan reluctantly departed, Auron turned to Violari, miming his intentions to help. She hesitated only briefly before nodding, carefully lifting Elara from the cradle and placing the infant in Auron's arms. The child was lighter than he expected, warm against his chest. As he held her, Alara's eyes fluttered open, entirely gold, like miniature suns, and fixed on him with an awareness that seemed impossible for an infant. Something stirred within Oran, a protective instinct so powerful it momentarily stole his breath. They moved toward the exit, Vailari limping beside him. As they emerged into the harsh Elorian light, the attackers came into clearer view, figures in sleek black armor that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Their faces were obscured by smooth, featureless masks, and they moved with a synchronicity that spoke of military training. "Shadow Corps," Oran muttered, the word feeling strange on his tongue. Whatever they were closing in quickly. They had almost reached the skimmer when the first shots rang out, energy pulses that sizzled through the air. Oran turned, shielding Alara with his body, as Vailari stumbled and fell beside him. A burning sensation erupted in his back as one of the pulses found its mark, and he dropped to his knees, still clutching the child protectively. Through the haze of pain, Oran saw Vailari rise beside him, her silver eyes now glowing with inner light. She raised her hands, and the air around them seemed to thicken, shimmer. The approaching attackers slowed, as if moving through viscous liquid. Vailari knelt beside Oran, her expression both fierce and gentle. She placed one hand on Alara, who remained eerily calm despite the chaos, and the other on Oran's wound. Then, to his shock, she drew a ceremonial dagger from within her robes and made a swift cut across her palm. Before he could react, she pressed her bleeding hand to his injury. Pain unlike anything Oran had experienced seared through him, not just physical, but somehow deeper, as if his very essence was being reshaped. Vailari chanted in her melodic language, her silver eyes locked with his. The world around them seemed to fall away, replaced by visions, stars being born and dying, civilizations rising and falling, all in the span of heartbeats. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the pain receded, replaced by a strange warmth that spread through his body. Oran gasped, feeling strength returning to his limbs despite the wound. Alara, still in his arms, cooed softly, one tiny hand reaching up to touch his face. "Blood covenant," Vailari said, her voice now somehow understandable. "You are bound to her now, to us." Before Oran could process what had happened, the skimmer appeared overhead. Keelan at the controls, providing covering fire against the mysterious Shadow Corps attackers. They boarded quickly, Dax helping to secure them as Keelan piloted a swift descent back toward the sanctum. "What happened down there?" Keelan demanded, glancing back at Oran holding the alien child, at Vailari with her glowing eyes and bloodied hand. Oran looked down at Alara, feeling the strange new connection humming within him like a second heartbeat. "I'm not entirely sure," he admitted, "but I think I just became part of something much bigger than myself." As the skimmer soared through Eloria's swirling skies, the infant in his arms gazed up at him with those golden eyes. And Auron Sal, disgraced soldier, broken man, felt something he hadn't experienced in years: purpose. The dreams came like tides of liquid fire. Oran floated in an ocean of memories not his own, ancient cities built from crystal and light, ceremonies performed beneath 3 moons, wars fought with weapons that bent reality itself. Through it all, a constant thread of music, a harmony so complex it made his human mind ache to comprehend it. He awoke to unfamiliar surroundings, stone walls carved with intricate glyphs that seemed to shift when he wasn't looking directly at them, soft, amber light filtering through crystalline fixtures. The air carried that same spiced ozone scent he'd detected in the crashed ship. "You return to us, Guardian." Vailari stood at the foot of the elevated platform where he lay. Her injuries appeared healed, though the exhaustion in her silver eyes remained. She wore ceremonial robes of deep indigo, embroidered with patterns that matched the shifting wall glyphs. Oran tried to sit up, grimacing as pain lanced through his back. "Where am I? Where's the child?" "You are in the Temple of Ascension, within the Sea Lore Sanctuary at the Sanctum." Vailari replied, "Elara is safe, tended by our caregivers." She approached, her movements fluid and graceful despite her evident fatigue. "Your wound heals well, considering its severity. The Blood Covenant has accelerated your recovery." "Blood Covenant," Oran repeated, the memories of their escape filtering back. "You said I was bound to you now. What does that mean exactly?" Vailari gestured to a mirror on the nearby wall. "See for yourself, Guardian." Oran rose cautiously and moved to the mirror. His reflection startled him, faint luminescent patterns now traced across his skin, similar to those of the Psi-Lore but more subdued. They pulsed gently with his heartbeat. "What have you done to me?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. "Saved your life," Vailari answered simply, "and in doing so, bound you to our clan. The Blood Covenant is sacred among the Psi-Lore, rarely offered to outsiders, never before to a human." She stepped closer, studying his face. "You took a projectile meant for Elara. You shielded her with no thought for yourself. Such selflessness demanded recognition." Oran turned from the mirror. "I acted on instinct. Any decent person would have done the same." A slight smile curved Vailari's lips. "Perhaps, but it was you who did, Oran Sal. And now you carry our blood, our essence, to the Psi-Lore. You are consecrated." "Consecrated," he echoed, discomfort growing. "I'm no holy man, Vailari. I'm a disgraced soldier with more regrets than achievements." "We do not expect perfection in our sacred ones," she replied. "Only courage and integrity when it matters most." She gestured to his chest, where the patterns glowed brightest. "The patterns tell your truth, even if your words deny it." Before Oran could argue further, the chamber doors opened to admit Keelan, accompanied by two Psi-Lore guards whose luminescent patterns marked them as warriors. Keelan's expression shifted from concern to relief at seeing Oran standing. "You're alive," Keelan said. "The Sanctum authorities have been in an uproar since we brought you all in. 3 unregistered aliens, one of them an infant, and you with some kind of biological contamination they couldn't identify." He nodded toward Oran's glowing patterns. "I see it's progressed." "It is not contamination," Vailari stated firmly. "It is communion. Your friend has been honored beyond measure." Keelan looked skeptical. "Whatever it is, the Covenant representatives want explanations. They've called an emergency council." He turned to Oran. "They want you there, if you're able." Oran nodded, then looked to Vailari. "I need to understand what's happening, who you are, what those attackers wanted, and what this Covenant means for me." "The Council will have their answers," Vailari said. "But first, you should meet Elara properly. Your blood now flows in her veins, as hers does in yours. In our culture, that makes you more than her protector. It makes you family." The nursery of the Sea Lore Sanctuary defied Auron's expectations. Rather than a sterile environment, it was a living garden. Trees with luminescent leaves grew from the stone floor, their branches forming natural cradles. Crystal formations caught and refracted light in mesmerizing patterns across the walls. Soft, harmonic tones emanated from nowhere and everywhere. In the center of this otherworldly space, Elara floated in a sphere of gently pulsing energy. Her golden eyes tracked their approach, and as Auron drew near, the sphere lowered, allowing him to see her clearly. The alien infant regarded him with that same impossible awareness he'd noticed during their escape. Her tiny hands reached toward him, patterns on her skin brightening in response to his presence. "She recognizes the blood bond," Vailari explained softly. "Among our people, such connections transcend mere biology. Your essence and hers now resonate at the same frequency, as if to demonstrate. Elara made a soft, cooing sound, and Auron felt something stir within him, an echo of emotion not his own. Wonder, curiosity, trust. I feel her, he whispered, astonished, in my mind. Vailari nodded. The bond will grow stronger with time. Eventually, you may share thoughts, emotions, even memories. She hesitated. That is why the elders are concerned. No human has ever been joined to a Xylor in this way, much less to one as significant as Elara. Significant? Auron questioned. She's an infant. She is the last descendant of the High Priestess lineage, Vailari explained, born amid prophecy and portent. Her arrival was foretold in our ancient texts, the child of flame who would restore balance between technology and spirit. Auron frowned. And the attackers, the Shadow Corps, they knew of this prophecy. The Shadow Corps are not who they appear to be. Vailari's voice hardened. They present themselves as autonomous mercenaries, but they serve corporate interests, specifically the Helix Consortium, a weapons manufacturer exploiting biological technologies. They seek Elara for her unique genetic properties, which could revolutionize their bioweapons. A chill ran through Auron. The Helix Consortium had been major military contractors during his service years, providing cutting-edge weaponry to human forces during territorial disputes. Their ethical boundaries had always been questionable at best. How would they even know about her, he asked. Betrayal, Vailari said simply. From within our own ranks, we believe the ship carrying Elara from our homeworld was meant to travel in secret to the ancient temple at Celestine. Instead, it was ambushed. Elara made another sound, this one distressed. Auron felt a shadow of fear pass through their connection. Without thinking, he reached out, allowing the energy sphere to part around his hand. The moment his fingers touched her skin, the infant calmed, and warmth flowed through their bond. She trusts you completely, Vailari observed. Already your patterns synchronize. Auron looked down at his arm, seeing how his luminescent markings had indeed shifted to match the rhythm of Elara's. What does this mean for me, for my life here at the Sanctum? It means, Guardian, that your path has changed, Vailari replied. The Shadow Corps will not stop hunting her, and now that you bear our marks, they will hunt you as well. She stepped closer, her silver eyes intense. You once served as a warrior of your people. Now fate asks you to serve as guardian to ours. Before Auron could respond, an alarm sounded throughout the sanctuary. Keelan, who had been waiting near the entrance, rushed toward them. Security breach at the Sanctum's outer perimeter, he reported tersely. Multiple intruders with advanced stealth technology. The Covenant forces are responding, but... The Shadow Corps, Vailari whispered. They've found us already. Auron's military instincts surged to the forefront. How secure is this sanctuary? Sacred ground is protected by ancient technologies and spiritual barriers, Vailari answered, but against determined technological assault. We need to move Elara, Auron decided. Is there a secondary location, somewhere less obvious? Vailari nodded. The deep shrine, but we would need to pass through the main sanctum halls to reach it. Then we need a diversion. Auron turned to Keelan. Can you access the sanctum's security systems? Already on it, his friend replied, activating his wrist interface. I can trigger protocols in sectors away from your intended path, but Auron, he hesitated. You're risking a lot for these aliens. The Covenant authorities might see this as further treason after Meridian. Auron looked down at Elara, feeling the trust flowing through their connection. Some things are worth the risk. Keelan, you know what happened at Meridian wasn't what they claimed. I couldn't stand against the lies then. I won't make the same mistake now. Understanding passed between the old comrades. Keelan nodded. I'll buy you time. Get the child to safety. As Keelan departed, Vailari gathered Alara from her energy cradle, wrapping the infant in ceremonial cloths embroidered with protective symbols. The deep shrine lies beneath the eastern quadrant, she explained, through the ancient passage known only to our priesthood. Oron checked the energy pistol Keelan had provided. Standard Covenant issue, limited in power but better than nothing. Lead the way, I'll cover our rear. They moved swiftly through the sanctuary's winding corridors, Valari's knowledge of secret passages allowing them to avoid the main thoroughfares. Through their bond, Oron could sense Alara's awareness of danger, yet the infant remained eerily calm, her golden eyes watchful. As they neared the junction connecting the Zelor sanctuary to the main sanctum complex, the sounds of conflict reached them, energy weapons discharging, shouted orders, the distinctive hum of security barriers activating. Keelan's diversion, Oron murmured. We need to move quickly while attention is focused elsewhere. They slipped into the main corridor, keeping to the shadows. The sanctum, usually a place of serene contemplation, had transformed into a battleground. Covenant security forces exchanged fire with shadowy figures whose armor seemed to absorb the very light around them. Halfway to their destination, disaster struck. A group of Shadow Corps operatives emerged from a side passage directly ahead of them, their featureless masks turned toward the trio, and weapons raised in unison. "Run!" Oron shouted to Vailari, positioning himself between her and the threat. "Get her to the shrine." As Vailari fled with Alara, Oron fired his energy pistol, forcing the operatives to take cover, but he was outnumbered and outgunned, the odds increasingly desperate. Then, from behind the Shadow Corps group, new combatants appeared, Xylor warriors, their luminescent patterns blazing with battle energy, wielding weapons that seemed to channel their own bioelectric fields. The tide turned swiftly, the Shadow Corps forces caught in crossfire. "Guardian," one of the Xylor called to him, "follow your bondmate. We will hold this position." Oron didn't need to be told twice. He raced after Vailari, the luminescent patterns on his skin guiding him like a compass toward his connected ones. He found them at the entrance to a concealed passage, Vailari pressing her hand against what appeared to be solid wall. At her touch, patterns matching her own skin illuminated across the surface, and the wall parted silently. "Quickly," she urged as Oron joined them. "The deep shrine lies beyond." The passage descended steeply, the air growing cooler and heavy with unfamiliar scents. Crystal formations along the walls provided soft illumination, reacting to their presence by brightening as they passed. After what seemed like an eternity of winding descent, the passage opened into a vast underground chamber that took Oron's breath away. The deep shrine was a cathedral of living crystal, with massive formations rising like pillars to support a ceiling lost in shadows. A pool of luminescent liquid occupied the center, its surface perfectly still, reflecting the crystal structures above. Surrounding the pool, ancient glyphs were carved into the stone floor, forming concentric circles of what Oron assumed were protective wards. "The heart of Xylor," Vailari said reverently, "one of the few sacred sites we were permitted to establish on Aeloria. Here, our connection to the cosmic harmony is strongest." She carried Alara to the pool's edge, kneeling to whisper ancient words as she touched the liquid surface. Ripples spread outward, and the entire chamber seemed to respond, crystals brightening, glyphs beginning to glow. "What is this place, really?" Oron asked, his voice hushed in the sacred space. "A nexus point," Vailari explained, "where the veil between physical and spiritual thins. Our ancestors established such sites across the stars, connecting our scattered people through the cosmic harmony." She looked up at him, her silver eyes reflecting the pool's glow. Through such connections, we may find a path to Celestine, the ancient homeworld of our people, where Elara might be truly safe. A distant explosion shook dust from the chamber ceiling. The battle above was intensifying. The shrine's defenses are formidable, Velari continued, but not impenetrable. We must prepare for the ritual of passage quickly. Ritual of passage, Oran questioned. To activate the stellar gateway, she explained, gesturing to the pool. But it requires significant energy, life force, which in my weakened state I cannot provide alone. Her gaze fixed on the luminescent patterns across his skin. Your blood covenant may allow you to assist, if you are willing. Another explosion, closer this time. The decision was made for him. Tell me what to do, Oran said. Velari positioned him opposite her at the pool's edge, with Elara between them. Place your hands in the waters, she instructed. Focus on your connection to Elara. Let the harmony flow through you. Oran did as instructed. Submerging his hands in the luminescent liquid, it felt neither wet nor dry, but somehow alive, tingling against his skin. The patterns on his arms brightened in response, energy flowing visibly from his body into the pool. Through their bond, he felt Elara's awareness expand, connecting with the energies around them. The infant's golden eyes widened, and for an instant, Oran glimpsed through her perception. The world transformed into patterns of energy, vibrating at frequencies beyond human comprehension. The pool began to glow more intensely, its surface swirling with colors unseen in the normal spectrum. The glyphs around them pulsed in rhythmic sequence, and a low harmonic tone filled the chamber. It's working, Velari breathed, her own patterns blazing. The gateway opens. From the center of the pool, a column of light began to rise, twisting like a living thing as it reached toward the chamber ceiling. Within its luminous core, images formed, distant landscapes, alien skies, what appeared to be a massive temple complex beneath 3 moons. Celestine, Velari identified the vision. Our ancient home, the gateway, is establishing connection. The chamber doors burst inward with explosive force, shattering the moment of wonder. Shadow Corps operatives poured into the shrine, weapons raised. Behind them strode a figure whose presence sent a shock of recognition through Oran, a tall, broad-shouldered man in military uniform rather than Shadow Corps armor. His face, once familiar in briefing rooms and strategy sessions, now hard with purpose and cruelty. General Kaltor, Oran whispered, disbelieving. Commander Saul, the man replied, his voice carrying the same authoritative tone Oran remembered from his military days. I might have known you'd be involved in this debacle. Treason seems to be becoming a habit for you. Velari stepped protectively in front of Elara, her posture shifting to one of defensive readiness. You lead these hunters? She demanded of Kaltor. You would violate sacred ground for corporate profit? Kaltor's laugh held no humor. Sacred ground, my dear lady. I violate nothing. I simply seek to advance human interests in an increasingly competitive interstellar environment. His gaze shifted to Elara. That child represents technological potential beyond anything our scientists have conceived. Imagine weapons that could target specific neural patterns, defenses that adapt to any attack, medical applications that could transform human longevity. She's a child, not a resource, Oran growled, positioning himself beside Velari. She's the future of human military dominance, Kaltor countered, and you, Saul, of all people, should understand the necessity of such advantage. After what happened at Meridian, after what we lost because our technology was inferior, he gestured to the luminescent patterns on Oran's skin. Though I see you've chosen your new allegiance, another disappointment in a career full of them. The column of light from the pool fluctuated, the gateway connection destabilizing with the intrusion. Valari whispered urgently to Oron, "The passage requires more energy now, a stronger connection." Kaltor seemed to sense their intent. "Secure the child," he ordered his operatives. "Kill the aliens if necessary. But Sal I want alive. His contamination requires study." As the Shadow Corps forces advanced, Oron made his decision. He grabbed Valari's hand, completing a circuit between them through the pool. "Take Alara through the gateway," he instructed. "I'll hold them here." "You cannot face them alone," Valari protested. "I'm not alone," Oron replied, feeling the strength of their connection. "I carry your blood, your essence, and I swore to protect her." Understanding passed between them. Valari nodded once, then leaned forward to press her forehead against his, a Xylor gesture of deep respect. "The ancient temple at Celestine," she whispered. "Find us there, Guardian. Your path is now bound to ours." With that, she gathered Alara and stepped into the column of light. The gateway pulsed, energy surging as it transported them across the vast distance between worlds. Then, as the first Shadow Corps operatives reached the pool's edge, the column collapsed in a flash of brilliance, temporarily blinding all present. When Auron's vision cleared, Valari and Alara were gone. The pool's surface had returned to stillness. The gateway closed. He stood alone, facing Kaltor and his forces. "That was a mistake, Sal," Kaltor said coldly. "Now we'll have to extract the information from you instead." Oron felt the bond within him, stretched thin by distance but unbroken, somewhere across the stars. Alara and Valari lived. He had made them a promise, one he intended to keep. "You always did underestimate me, General," Oron replied, the luminescent patterns on his skin brightening with newfound purpose. He dropped into a fighting stance, prepared to make his last stand. But as the Shadow Corps closed in, the shrine responded to his blood covenant. Crystal formations suddenly pulsed with intense light, and the glyphs on the floor erupted with energy. The Shadow Corps operatives nearest to Oron were thrown backward by an invisible force, while the pool's surface began to churn violently. Kaltor's expression shifted from confidence to concern. "What have you done?" "I haven't done anything," Oron answered truthfully. "But it seems the Sea Lord don't abandon their own." The pool erupted, a geyser of luminescent liquid shooting upward to form not a gateway, but a barrier around Auron. Through it, he could see the Shadow Corps forces opening fire, their energy weapons absorbed harmlessly by the liquid shield. Then, to his shock, the floor beneath him began to shift, descending like an elevator into unknown depths. The last thing he saw was Kaltor's face contorted with rage before the shrine ceiling closed over him, sealing him away from his pursuers. Oron descended into darkness, the luminescent patterns on his skin providing the only light. The sensation of movement continued for what seemed like minutes before finally slowing. When it stopped, new passages opened before him, ancient tunnels stretching into the unknown depths beneath Eloria. A soft glow pulsed ahead, beckoning him forward, following it. Oron felt the bond within him strengthening, guiding him toward his new destiny. He had been a soldier without purpose, a man without honor. Now he was a guardian with a sacred duty. "Celestine," he whispered to himself as he strode into the unknown. "I'm coming." The atmospheric deserts of Eloria stretched before Auron like an ocean of swirling gases, beautiful and deadly in equal measure. From his vantage point atop the ridge, he could trace the path ahead, a treacherous journey through the most volatile region of the planet's borderlands. Behind him lay the concealed exit from the Xylor tunnels that had allowed his escape from the sanctum. Ahead, somewhere beyond the plasma storms, lay the ancient launch site where, according to the knowledge imparted through his blood covenant, a vessel waited that could transport him to Celestine. 3 days had passed since his confrontation with Kaltor in the deep shrine, 3 days of navigating the hidden pathways of the Zilor, guided by instincts not entirely his own and the luminescent patterns that now marked his skin. The blood covenant had continued to transform him in subtle ways, enhanced senses, improved healing, and most significantly, an intuitive understanding of Zilor technology that he couldn't possibly have learned otherwise. His bond with Alara remained a constant presence at the edge of his consciousness. Through it, he sensed that she was safe but distressed, likely sensing his absence as keenly as he felt hers. The distance between worlds strained their connection, but didn't break it. Quite the view, isn't it? Almost makes you forget we're being hunted. Oron turned to find Keelan approaching, looking worse for wear but very much alive. His friend carried a pack of supplies and what appeared to be modified Covenant weaponry. Keelan, Oron greeted him with genuine relief. I wasn't sure you'd made it out. Nearly didn't, Keelan admitted, dropping his pack and settling beside Oron on the ridge. Shadow Corps hit the sanctum hard after you disappeared. Covenant security forces pushed them back eventually, but not before they interrogated half the population looking for you. He nodded toward Oron's luminescent markings. Those are brighter than before. The Covenant grows stronger, Oron explained. The more I embrace it, the more it changes me. Keelan studied him carefully. And you're okay with that? Becoming something other than human? The question gave Oron pause. Was he? The transformation had been neither requested nor expected, yet he couldn't deny the sense of purpose it had brought him, a clarity he'd lacked since his disgrace at Meridian. I'm still me, he finally answered. Just more, somehow. He gestured toward the atmospheric deserts. I can feel the currents in those storms now, predict their movements. I know which paths are safe and which would kill us instantly. Knowledge I couldn't possibly have without this connection. Convenient, Keelan acknowledged. And your plan now is what? To somehow reach Celestine, a planet I've never even heard of, to find the alien child and her priestess? Vailari, Oron corrected automatically. Her name is Vailari, and yes, that's exactly my plan. He turned to his friend. You don't have to come with me. Keelan, you've risked enough already. Keelan snorted, and missed the chance to visit an uncharted alien world. Besides, someone needs to keep you from getting yourself killed. He reached into his pack and pulled out a data tablet. You should know what we're up against. Kaltor has branded you a traitor, again, claiming you've been compromised by alien biological influence. There's a Covenant-wide alert for your capture. Oron had expected as much. And the truth about Shadow Corps, about Kaltor's involvement? Buried, Keelan replied grimly. Officially, Shadow Corps is registered as a private security firm contracted to handle extraterrestrial biological threats. No mention of their connection to Helix Consortium or any weapons development. Kaltor's involvement is completely off the record. Just like Meridian, Oron said bitterly, another cover-up to protect the powerful. Not exactly like Meridian, Keelan countered. This time you have allies. Not everyone believes the official story. He activated the tablet, displaying messages from former squad members, scientists from the Sanctum, even a few Covenant officials expressing doubts about the charges against Auron. They're watching for any communication from you, Keelan continued, ready to help if they can. The question is, what do we tell them? Oron considered this as he gazed out at the atmospheric storms. The truth, he decided, about Alara, about the Zilor, about what Kaltor is really after. If enough people know, they can't just make it disappear. Keelan nodded, then hesitated before asking, and what is the truth, Oron? What makes this child so special that Kaltor would risk everything, that you would become this? He gestured to Oron's transformed appearance. Oron closed his eyes, reaching through the bond to the distant presence of Alara. Images flooded his mind. Ancient cities built from living crystal, technology that blended seamlessly with biological systems, energy manipulation beyond anything humans had achieved. "She's the last of a royal bloodline," he explained, opening his eyes. "Born with the ability to interface directly with Xylor technology we've barely begun to understand. In the wrong hands, it could create weapons of unimaginable power. In the right hands—" He trailed off, remembering the glimpses of Celestine he'd seen in the gateway. In the right hands, it could transform our understanding of the universe. Keelan absorbed this in silence, then simply said, "Well, we'd better get moving then. Those storms wait for no man, alien-enhanced or otherwise." They descended into the atmospheric deserts as twin suns crested the horizon, casting an otherworldly glow through the swirling gases. Oron led with newfound confidence, his luminescent patterns brightening whenever they approached dangerous concentrations of plasma or electrical discharges. The journey that would have been suicide for normal travelers became merely challenging with his guidance. By midday, they had reached a series of rock formations rising like islands from the gaseous sea. Here, according to Oron's covenant-granted knowledge, lay a hidden Xylor outpost, one of many established across Eloria during their people's initial exploration centuries ago. "There," he indicated a seemingly solid rock face. "The entrance is concealed, but it should respond to my blood covenant." As they approached, Oron placed his palm against the stone. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, responding to the luminescent patterns on his skin, ancient glyphs appeared across the rock surface, glowing with the same ethereal light. The stone parted silently, revealing a passage into the mountain. "Impressive," Keelan murmured as they entered the hidden sanctuary. "How many of these places exist on Eloria?" "Dozens, according to what I've inherited," Oron replied. "The Xylor were the first non-native species to explore this world. Long before the Covenant was established, they left these sanctuaries as waypoints for future generations." The interior opened into a chamber similar to the deep shrine beneath the sanctum, though smaller in scale. Crystal formations provided natural illumination, brightening at their presence. At the center stood what appeared to be a control console of sorts, organic curves melded with crystalline interfaces. Oron approached it with instinctive understanding, placing his hands on the surface. The console activated immediately, responding to his covenant-altered biology. Holographic displays appeared above it, showing star maps and data in the flowing script of the Xylor language. "Can you read that?" Keelan asked, staring at the alien text. "Not exactly read," Oron replied, his eyes tracking the symbols with newfound comprehension. "But I understand it somehow. This outpost is still functional, but dormant for centuries." His hands moved across the interface with growing confidence. "It contains records of Xylor presence on Eloria, star charts to their other settlements, and—" He paused, focusing on a particular data stream, communications logs. With a few more gestures, he activated what appeared to be a message system. A holographic projection appeared above the console, the image of a Xylor elder, her luminescent patterns marking her as a high priestess. She spoke in the melodic language of her people, words Oron somehow understood. The communion between worlds weakens. The priestess's message translated in his mind. Celestine's defenses falter against the technological onslaught. The sacred sites are compromised one by one. We send the child, the flame child, away for protection, but fear follows her path. Those who value power over harmony have learned of her existence. The message continued, detailing the decision to hide Alara among the outer colonies, away from those who would exploit her unique connection to the ancient technologies. It spoke of a schism among the Xylor themselves, traditionalists who believed in preserving their spiritual heritage versus progressives who sought to adapt their ancient knowledge for modern survival. The coming storm cannot be avoided, the priestess concluded, only weathered. When the child of flame returns to the celestial temple, the true path will be revealed. Until then, we endure, we preserve, we remember the harmony. The message ended, leaving Aaron and Keelan in contemplative silence. Well, that was cryptic, Keelan finally said. Any idea what the true path might be? Aaron shook his head. Not specifically, but through the bond, I sense that Alara is already at this celestial temple. Velari must have taken her there after they passed through the gateway. He turned back to the console. What we need now is transportation. According to these records, there should be... A distant explosion interrupted him, shaking dust from the chamber ceiling. That didn't sound natural, Keelan observed grimly, drawing his weapon. Aaron accessed the outpost's external sensors through the console. The holographic display shifted to show the approach of multiple figures in the distinctive light-absorbing armor of Shadow Corps operatives. Leading them was a familiar silhouette, General Kaltor himself. How did they find us? Keelan demanded. Aaron's mind raced through possibilities before settling on the most likely. The Blood Covenant. They must have developed a way to track the unique energy signature. He cursed under his breath. I led them straight here. Another explosion. Closer this time, the Shadow Corps forces were breaching the outer defenses of the outpost. We need to move, Aaron decided, accessing deeper functions of the console. There's a network of tunnels beneath us, leading to a hangar bay. If we're lucky, the vessel mentioned in these records is still operational. And if we're not lucky? Keelan asked as they hurried toward a newly revealed passage. Then we make our last stand here, Aaron replied grimly. Either way, Kaltor doesn't get what he wants. They descended through ancient corridors carved with the same shifting glyphs Aaron had seen in the deep shrine. The luminescent patterns on his skin guided them, brightening to indicate the correct path at each junction. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit grew, energy weapons discharging, the methodical advance of trained operatives. Finally, the passage opened into a vast cavern that took both men's breath away. Suspended in a cradle of crystalline supports hung a ship unlike any Aaron had seen before, sleek and organic in design, its hull bearing the same iridescent quality as the vessel in which they had found Alara. By the stars, Keelan whispered, that's not just a ship, it's a work of art. Aaron approached the vessel, feeling a resonance with his blood covenant. As he neared, a section of the hull rippled and parted, forming an entrance. It recognizes me, he realized aloud. The covenant gives me access. They boarded quickly, finding the interior as alien yet intuitive as the outpost's systems. The ship responded to Aaron's presence, control interfaces illuminating as he passed. At what appeared to be the command center, he placed his hands on a crystalline console similar to the one above. The vessel hummed to life around them, systems activating after centuries of dormancy. Can you actually fly this thing? Keelan asked, eyeing the unfamiliar controls skeptically. I think the ship flies itself, Aaron replied, feeling knowledge flow through the covenant bond. I just need to guide it, provide direction. The sound of weapons fire reached them. The Shadow Corps had found the hangar. Through the ship's sensors, Aaron could see them spreading out, establishing firing positions around the vessel. We need to launch now, Keelan urged, taking position at what seemed to be a weapons station, before they can bring heavier artillery to bear. Aaron focused on the ship's propulsion systems, channeling his intent through the covenant bond. The crystalline supports retracted from the hull, and the vessel began to rise smoothly from its cradle. The hangar ceiling above them parted, revealing a circular opening to the atmospheric deserts above. Energy blasts from Shadow Corps weapons impacted the hull, but seemed to cause no damage, merely being absorbed into the ship's iridescent surface. Keelan let out a low whistle of appreciation. Whatever this material is, we could use it in Covenant vessels. As they ascended toward the opening, Oran spotted Kaltor on a platform below, his expression visible even at this distance, a mixture of rage and determination. Their eyes met briefly before the ship cleared the hangar and soared into Eloria's swirling skies. "Setting course for orbital departure," Oran announced, feeling the ship respond to his guidance. "The vessel has something like a faster-than-light drive, but different from our technology. It travels through, I don't have words for it, something like folds in reality." "Slip space," Keelan suggested. "Covenant scientists have theorized about it, but never achieved practical application." "Something like that," Oran agreed. "But we're not escaping Eloria just yet. There's someone else we need to find first." Keelan raised an eyebrow. "Someone?" "Dax Lauren," Oran explained. "The biologist from our patrol team. According to the messages in the outpost, she's been researching Xylor biology since our encounter. She might have information we need about Celestine, about what awaits us there." "And she just happens to be outside Covenant or Shadow Corps control?" Keelan asked skeptically. "She's at the Meridian Research Station," Oran replied, "where they've been studying the aftermath of what happened there, supposedly under quarantine, but really under Helix Consortium supervision." Keelan's expression darkened. "You want to go back to Meridian after everything that happened there?" "Sometimes to move forward, you have to revisit your past," Oran said quietly, setting the ship's course. "Besides, I think it's time I faced what really happened at Meridian, what Kaltor and the Consortium covered up." As the Xylor vessel accelerated through Eloria's upper atmosphere, Oran felt the bond with Alara pulse stronger for a moment, as if in approval. Whatever awaited them at Meridian and beyond on Celestine, he was no longer the broken man who had sought oblivion at the Sanctum of Stars. The Blood Covenant had given him more than just alien biology. It had given him purpose. And somewhere across the stars, a child with golden eyes waited for her guardian to fulfill his promise. The atmospheric storm raged across the plains of Celestine, a maelstrom of energy and light that painted the alien landscape in surreal colors. From the safety of the ancient temple, Valari watched the tempest through towering crystal windows, her silver eyes reflecting the brilliant flashes outside. In her arms, Alara stirred restlessly, tiny hands reaching toward the storm as if sensing something within its chaos. "He comes," Valari whispered to the infant. "Your guardian finds his way to us, little one, even across the void between worlds. Your bond guides him." The grand hall of the celestial temple stood largely empty, its vast spaces designed for ceremonies and gatherings of a civilization now scattered across the stars. Once, thousands of Xylor had walked these sacred halls. Now barely 100 remained, the last keepers of ancient knowledge, guarding their traditions against the encroachment of technological pragmatism that had divided their people. Footsteps approached from behind, and Violari turned to find Elder Nixari, leader of the temple's council, her luminescent patterns marking her venerable age and wisdom. "The human vessel has entered our atmosphere," Nixari announced, her tone carefully neutral. "Our sentinels report it navigates the storm with unexpected skill." "Not unexpected," Valari corrected gently. "Oran Sal carries our blood now. The Covenant grants him insights beyond his human limitations." Nixari's expression remained skeptical. A blood covenant performed in desperation, without proper rituals or council approval. Many among us question the wisdom of binding our last royal child to an alien warrior, particularly one of human origin. "You were not there," Valari countered. "You did not see how he shielded her with his own body, taking a wound meant for her without hesitation." She gazed down at Alara, who had settled again, golden eyes watching the exchange with that unnerving awareness. The covenant was not my choice alone. The child called to his blood. As our ancestors described in the ancient texts, such a calling cannot be denied. Perhaps, Nixari conceded reluctantly, but the council remains divided. Some see this human as prophesied, the guardian from beyond who would protect the flame child. Others see only danger in allowing an outsider such intimate connection to our last hope. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. And there are whispers, Valari, that your judgment may be compromised by feelings unrelated to your priestly duties. Valari felt a flush of heat rise to her face, her patterns brightening involuntarily. My feelings are irrelevant. Only the harmony matters now. So you say, Nixari replied, unconvinced. Regardless, the council has agreed to grant this human audience. He may present his case, and we shall judge whether he is truly the guardian of prophecy or merely another threat to our survival. With that, the elder departed, leaving Valari alone with Alara and her troubled thoughts. Outside, the storm intensified, lightning arcing between massive crystal formations that dotted the landscape surrounding the temple. Within its fury, a ship descended, not with the struggle one might expect, but with graceful precision, as if dancing between the energy discharges. Valari watched its approach, feeling both anticipation and apprehension. Come safely, Guardian, she whispered. The true challenge awaits within these walls. The Meridian Research Station hung in low orbit above the planet that had nearly ended Auron's career and his life. From the viewports of the Silor vessel, the facility appeared innocuous, a standard Covenant research platform, its modular sections arranged in the familiar hexagonal pattern of human architecture. But to Auron, it represented something far darker, the aftermath of a mission gone horribly wrong and the beginning of a cover-up that had cost him everything. Approaching docking parameters, he announced, guiding the alien ship toward the station with growing confidence in its systems. No alert signals yet. Either they don't recognize this vessel's configuration or they're waiting to see what we do. Keelan monitored the communications array he'd jury-rigged to interface with Covenant frequencies. Nothing on standard channels. If they've spotted us, they're keeping quiet about it. He glanced at Auron. What's our plan once we're aboard? The station will have security protocols, especially in the research sectors. Dax's last message indicated she works in Section 7, the Xenobiology Division. Auron replied, if we can dock at the maintenance bay in Section 4, we can access the service corridors to reach her without going through the main security checkpoints. The ship responded to his guidance, approaching the designated docking port with precision that belied its alien origin. Through the Covenant bond, Auron sensed the vessel's semi-sentient systems adapting to interface with human technology, a remarkable feat of compatibility he couldn't have imagined before his transformation. As they neared the docking mechanism, Keelan voiced the concern that had been building since they'd set course for Meridian. You never told me what really happened here. You know, the official report claimed you disobeyed direct orders, endangered your squad by entering a quarantine zone, but I never believed it. Auron's hands stilled on the control interface, memories flooding back. The desperate transmissions from the research outpost, the decision to investigate despite Kaltor's explicit orders to maintain distance, the horror they'd discovered inside. The Helix Consortium was conducting illegal weapons research, he said quietly, biological agents designed to target specific neural patterns. They'd brought test subjects to Meridian because its remote location put it outside regular Covenant inspection routes. His luminescent patterns darkened with the painful recollection. By the time my squad arrived, something had gone wrong. The containment had failed. The researchers were dead or dying, and the subjects. He trailed off, the images still too vivid. You tried to help them, Keelan surmised. We tried to contain the situation, Oran corrected, to prevent whatever they'd created from spreading, but Kaltor arrived with a Helix security team before we could complete the containment protocols. They weren't there to help. They were there to erase evidence. His jaw tightened. They purged the facility, everyone inside, including 3 of my squad members who were still setting up quarantine barriers, and then blamed you for the deaths, Keelan finished grimly. Claimed you'd violated orders and exposed your team to a known hazard. Kaltor gave me a choice, Oran continued. Accept the official story and dishonorable discharge, or face trial for treason with evidence they'd manufactured. Either way, the truth about what Helix was doing would never come to light. The ship completed its docking sequence, connecting with the station's port with a gentle shudder. Oran rose from the control interface, his expression hardening with resolve. That's why we're here, he concluded, not just for Dax and what she knows about the Psi lore, but for the truth about Meridian. If Kaltor and Helix are pursuing Alara for the same kind of weapons research, we need evidence of their previous work to expose them. Keelan stood as well, checking his weapon. Then let's go unbury some secrets. They exited the ship into the maintenance bay, finding it mercifully empty save for service drones going about their programmed tasks. Oran led the way, his enhanced senses alert for any sign of human presence. The service corridors beyond were similarly deserted. The station operated with minimal personnel, most of its functions automated since the incident that had placed it under special protocols. As they moved deeper into the facility, Oran felt a strange resonance through his blood covenant, a subtle vibration that grew stronger with each step toward the research sections. Something within the station was interacting with his transformed biology. Do you feel that? He asked Keelan as they paused at a junction. Keelan shook his head. Feel what? Oran couldn't properly describe it, a pulling sensation, almost like the bond with Alara, but different. Following the feeling, he adjusted their route, leading them not toward Section 7 as planned, but toward a heavily secured area marked only as special projects. This isn't the way to Dax, Keelan pointed out as they approached a security door requiring high-level clearance. I know, Oran admitted, but something's calling to me from in there, something connected to the Covenant. The security panel beside the door posed an obvious obstacle. Retinal and palm scanners, plus code encryption that would take hours to hack. But as Oran approached, the luminescent patterns on his skin brightened and began to pulse in a specific rhythm. Acting on instinct, he placed his hand against the scanner. To both men's shock, the panel beeped in acceptance and the security door slid open. How in the void did you do that? Keelan demanded in a hushed voice. I don't know, Oran replied honestly, but I think we're about to find out. The laboratory beyond was a stark contrast to the utilitarian corridors outside. Cutting-edge equipment filled the space, much of it unlike standard Covenant technology. But what dominated the center of the room made Oran's blood run cold. A containment chamber housing what appeared to be a Psi-lore artifact, similar to the crystalline technologies he'd encountered in the hidden outpost, but clearly damaged. Around it, monitoring equipment captured data from the pulsing object. They salvaged it from Meridian, a familiar voice said from the shadows. The real reason for the research outpost there. The real reason for the cover-up. Dax Lauren stepped into view, her researcher's uniform marked with the Helix Consortium insignia she hadn't worn during their patrol. Her expression was a complex mixture of regret and determination. Dax, Oran acknowledged cautiously, I was coming to find you. I know, she replied. The moment your ship docked, security protocols alerted me. I've been tracking your progress through the station. She gestured to the artifact, but it seems the artifact found you first. It's been dormant for months, unresponsive to all our tests. Until now. The crystal structure within the containment field was indeed reacting to Auron's presence, its patterns synchronizing with those on his skin. "What is it?" Keelan asked, weapon ready but not yet raised. "A Sylar memory crystal," Dax explained. "Or at least, that's what we've theorized. It contains data, immense amounts of it, but in a form we can't access or decode. Helix found it buried on Meridian decades ago, long before the colony was established. They built the research facility specifically to study it." "And the biological weapons program?" Auron questioned. "The one that went catastrophically wrong?" Dax sighed heavily. "An offshoot of the main research. They discovered the crystal responded to certain neural patterns, certain genetic markers. They were trying to reverse engineer the connection, create humans who could interface with Sylar technology." Her gaze fixed on Auron's luminescent skin patterns. "But it seems the Sylar found a more direct solution with you." Auron approached the containment field, feeling the pull growing stronger. "This is what caused the disaster at Meridian, isn't it? Not just a containment breach of biological agents, but something to do with this artifact." "The researchers pushed too hard," Dax confirmed, "tried to force access to the crystal's data through unethical neural linking experiments. The crystal reacted, released some kind of energy pulse that affected the minds of everyone within range. Those closest went insane immediately. Others suffered progressive neural deterioration." She stepped closer to Auron, studying his transformed appearance. "But you've achieved what they couldn't, true communion with Sylar technology. Helix would consider you the ultimate success and the ultimate asset." "I'm not an asset," Auron stated firmly, "and neither is Alara. We're not weapons to be used." "The child," Dax said, understanding dawning. "That's what this is really about, isn't it? Why Calter and Shadow Core have been tearing apart the sanctum looking for you. The infant is genetically optimized to interface with artifacts like this one." "She's not a genetic experiment," Auron corrected, feeling protective anger rise. "She's the last of a royal bloodline, born with a natural connection to technologies your scientists can barely comprehend." Dax considered this, then made a decision. She moved to a console and began deactivating security protocols. "Whatever she is, I've seen enough of Helix's methods to know they'll destroy her in their pursuit of power. The containment field is coming down. If this artifact is calling to you, perhaps you should answer." The field dissipated with a soft hum, leaving the crystal exposed. It pulsed more vigorously now, its glow intensifying as Auron stepped closer. The patterns on his skin responded in kind, creating a visual harmony between man and artifact. "Auron, are you sure about this?" Keelan cautioned. "After what happened to the researchers." "I'm already connected to their world," Auron replied, reaching toward the crystal. "This is just another piece of the puzzle." His fingers touched the smooth surface, and the world exploded into light. Visions flooded his consciousness, not fragmented glimpses like before, but a coherent narrative spanning centuries. He saw Celestine in its prime, a world of crystal cities and harmonious technology. He witnessed the Sylar spreading throughout the stars, establishing outposts on dozens of worlds, including Meridian and Eloria. He experienced their first contact with humans, the initial wonder giving way to caution as they observed humanity's technological development outpacing its spiritual evolution. And then he saw the schism that tore their civilization apart, those who believed in preserving their spiritual traditions versus those who advocated embracing more aggressive technologies to survive in an increasingly dangerous cosmos. Civil conflict erupted, driving the traditionalists back to Celestine while the progressives established their own worlds, eventually severing their connection to the cosmic harmony that had defined Sylar culture. Finally, he witnessed the prophecy, the birth of a child who would reunite the sundered halves of their civilization, bridging the gap between spiritual tradition and technological progress, the Flame Child, whose coming had been foretold by their most revered seers. When Auron's consciousness returned to the present, he found himself kneeling before the crystal, which had now integrated its patterns with his own. Keelan and Dax watched in astonishment as the luminescent markings on his skin stabilized into more complex configurations. "What did you see?" Dax asked, her scientific curiosity overriding caution. "Everything," Auron breathed. "Their history, their struggle, their hope." He stood, newfound knowledge settling within him like pieces of a puzzle finding their place. This artifact was left on Meridian as a beacon, a repository of their history for future generations, but it was never meant to be accessed through force or technological interface. It requires the blood covenant, a willing communion between species. He turned to Keelan. "We need to get to Celestine, now, before Kalter realizes what we've discovered here." "Too late for that, Commander Saul." The laboratory door slid open to reveal General Kaltor, flanked by Shadow Corps operatives with weapons trained on the trio. The general stepped forward, his cold gaze taking in the scene, the exposed artifact, Auron's enhanced appearance, Dax's clear betrayal. "Dr. Lauren, I'm disappointed," Kalter said smoothly. "After everything Helix has provided for your research, this is how you repay that generosity, by aiding a known traitor?" "The only traitor here is you, Kaltor," Auron countered. "I've seen the memory crystal's records. I know what really happened on Meridian, what you and Helix were really doing there. Advancing human interests in an increasingly hostile universe," Kalter replied unapologetically. "The Xylor had technologies that could have revolutionized our defenses, our expansion capabilities, but they refused to share, hiding behind their spiritual mumbo-jumbo while other species raced ahead." "You didn't want to share," Auron corrected. "You wanted to take, to weaponize knowledge that was never meant for warfare." Kaltor's expression hardened. "And now look at you, the perfect synthesis of what we were trying to achieve. Human determination enhanced by Xylor capabilities." He gestured to his operatives. "Secure him and the artifact. Kill the others." Chaos erupted in an instant. Keelan drew his weapon, firing at the Shadow Corps forces while pulling Dax behind a research console for cover. Auron, acting on newfound instincts, reached out to the memory crystal, establishing a deeper connection through his blood covenant. The artifact responded spectacularly, releasing a pulse of energy that disrupted the Shadow Corps weapons and temporarily blinded their users. "The ship," Auron shouted to Keelan. "Get Dax there now!" As his companions made their escape, Auron faced Kaltor, who had drawn his own sidearm despite the energy disruption. "You're throwing away humanity's future," the general snarled. "That child could be the key to technologies beyond our imagining." "She already is," Auron replied, "just not in the way you intended." With a final mental command to the memory crystal, Auron triggered a more powerful energy release, not destructive but transformative. The pulse washed over the laboratory, corrupting digital systems and erasing research data while leaving the physical infrastructure intact. By the time Kaltor recovered his vision, Auron had vanished, taking the crystal with him. The journey to the docking bay was a blur of alarms and confusion, station personnel evacuating as systems failed in cascading sequence. Auron found Keelan and Dax at the Xylor vessel, already preparing for departure. "What did you do?" Dax asked as he boarded with the memory crystal clutched against his chest. "Erased their research," Auron explained, placing the artifact in a secure compartment aboard the ship. "Set back their program by years at least, and transmitted evidence of Kaltor's crimes to every Covenant authority with the clearance to receive it. They'll bury it again, Keelan warned as he initiated launch sequences. Maybe, Oran acknowledged, but not as easily this time, and we'll have something they don't. The truth about Celestine, and about what Alara really represents. As the ship disengaged from the station and accelerated away from Meridian, Oran felt the bond with Alara strengthen, as if the distance between them was somehow diminishing despite the vast cosmic gulf still to cross. The memory crystal pulsed in harmony with his covenant-enhanced biology, guiding their course toward a world humans had never visited, a sanctuary of ancient wisdom and the last hope for a civilization teetering on the edge of extinction. Dax joined him at the control interface, her expression reflecting both scientific fascination and personal concern. This transformation you've undergone, is it permanent? Oran looked down at the luminescent patterns that now covered much of his visible skin. It's not just physical, he explained. The covenant changes you at a fundamental level, your perception, your understanding. I see the universe differently now, feel it differently. He met her gaze directly. I can never go back to being just human, but I don't think I want to. And the child, Dax pressed, what does she represent to the Psi-lore that makes her worth such sacrifice? Balance, Oran replied, the knowledge from the memory crystal flowing through him. Harmony between tradition and progress, between spiritual wisdom and technological advancement. Their civilization fractured over this divide, and Alara represents the possibility of reunion. He smiled slightly. Ironic that a human now stands as her guardian, given our species' own struggles with the same conflict. As the ship accelerated to escape velocity, Oran felt the memory crystal's influence spreading throughout the vessel, enhancing its systems, preparing it for the interstellar journey ahead. Through the viewport, the stars beckoned, and somewhere among them, a child with golden eyes awaited her guardian's return. The atmospheric storm had finally passed, leaving the crystalline landscape of Celestine bathed in the light of its 3 moons. From the highest spire of the celestial temple, Valari watched as the elders performed the ancient rituals around the sacred pool, similar to the one in the deep shrine on Ailoria, but vastly larger and more powerful. At the center, Ilara floated in a sphere of energy, her golden eyes tracking the ceremonial movements with that unnerving awareness. The communion strengthens, Elder Nixari observed. Approaching Violari at the observatory window, the child responds to the rituals as no initiate has in generations. She carries the royal bloodline in its purest form, Valari replied, the last of the high priestess lineage. Of course, she responds. Nixari's silver eyes narrowed slightly. You avoid mention of the human's influence. The blood covenant you performed has altered her resonance patterns. Some on the council fear this foreign element might corrupt her connection to the cosmic harmony. Or enhance it, Valari countered. The ancient texts speak of bridges between different ways of knowing. Perhaps Auron Sal represents such a bridge. Not corruption, but completion. A convenient interpretation for one whose judgment might be clouded by personal attachment, Nixari remarked pointedly. Violari turned to face the elder directly. My duty to the flame child supersedes all personal considerations. You know this, Nixari. The covenant was necessary for her survival, and Auron's worthiness was proven by his willingness to sacrifice himself. The patterns do not lie. Before Nixari could respond, a young acolyte rushed into the observatory, patterns flashing with excitement. Priestess Vailari, elders, the sentinels report an approaching vessel of Psi-lore design but bearing unusual energy signatures. Vailari's heart quickened. He's here. The council chamber of the Celestial Temple was an architectural marvel, a perfect acoustic dome supported by crystal pillars that captured and amplified the harmonics of Psi-lore speech. Here, the 12 remaining elders gathered in a semicircle, their ceremonial robes and luminescent patterns signifying their specific roles within the spiritual hierarchy. At the center of their attention stood Auron Sol, still adjusting to the slightly different gravity and atmosphere of Celestine. Beside him, Keelan and Dax observed with poorly concealed wonder, their first encounter with a full Xylor ceremonial gathering clearly overwhelming their scientific detachment. The memory crystal hovered between them, suspended in an energy field similar to those Auron had seen throughout the temple. "The human brings the meridian crystal," one elder announced, her voice carrying the musical cadence characteristic of their species. "After centuries lost to us, it returns through alien hands." "Guided by the blood covenant," another elder added, his patterns shifting to indicate cautious approval. "A covenant performed without proper authority or ritual, yet one that has proven effective." Nixari, who appeared to hold the highest position among them, stepped forward. "Auron Sol of Earth, you stand before the Council of Elders as an anomaly, neither fully human nor truly Xylor. Through circumstances both desperate and profound, you have become connected to our most precious child, our last hope." Her silver eyes studied him intently. "What do you seek from us?" Auron had prepared for this moment during the journey, consulting the memory crystal's vast knowledge. He responded in the formal language of Xylor diplomacy, his accent imperfect but his intent clear. "Honored elders of Celestine, I come neither as conqueror nor supplicant, but as guardian to Alara, bound by blood and choice to her protection and prosperity." The luminescent patterns across his skin brightened as he spoke, responding to the ceremonial nature of the exchange. "I seek understanding of the covenant that joins us, guidance in nurturing her gifts, and alliance against those who would exploit her powers for destruction." A murmur passed through the council at his use of their formal speech patterns. Nixari's expression remained impassive, but her patterns betrayed surprise. "You speak our tongue," she observed, "and you carry the meridian crystal, one of our most sacred repositories of knowledge. How came you to possess such understanding?" "The blood covenant opened pathways of knowledge," Auron explained. "The crystal responded to that connection, sharing its wisdom when I needed it most." "Convenient," remarked an elder, whose patterns marked him as a traditionalist. "Perhaps too convenient. The crystal has remained silent for centuries, resistant to all attempts at communion, yet it speaks to this human after mere days of connection to our bloodline." "Perhaps," Valari interjected, stepping forward from her position at the chamber's edge. "That is precisely why," it responded. "The crystal was placed on Meridian as a bridge between worlds, a repository accessible to those who approach with both spiritual awareness and technological understanding. Auron Sol represents that very intersection." The council shifted uncomfortably at this interpretation. Nixari raised a hand for silence before addressing Auron again. "You speak of those who would exploit the child. Explain this threat as you understand it." Auron gestured to Keelan and Dax, who stepped forward with evidence they had gathered, data crystals containing records from Meridian, visual documentation of the Shadow Core attacks, and analysis of Helix Consortium's weapons research. General Kaltor of Earth's military command, in partnership with the Helix Consortium, has been attempting to weaponize Xylor technology for decades. Auron explained. Their efforts on Meridian resulted in catastrophic failure, but they've continued their research in secret. When they learned of Alara's existence, her natural ability to interface with your ancient technologies, they launched a coordinated effort to capture her. He projected images of the attack on the crashed ship, of the assault on the Sanctum of Stars. They will not stop. They see in her the key to weapons of unimaginable power, and they're not entirely wrong. Her connection to the cosmic harmony could indeed be twisted toward destruction, if forced down that path. And yet you, a military man yourself, claim to seek her protection rather than her power. Nixari observed, "Why should we trust your intentions above those of your own kind?" Oron considered this fair question carefully before answering. "Because I've seen what happens when technological advancement outpaces spiritual wisdom. I witnessed it at Meridian. I've lived with the consequences of those choices." He touched the scar on his cheek, a reminder of his past failures. "The blood covenant has given me glimpses of another way, the harmony your people cultivated for millennia. I believe that balance is what Alara represents, not just for the Psi lore, but potentially for humanity as well." A tense silence followed his declaration. The elders communicated among themselves through subtle pattern shifts, too complex for Oron to interpret despite his enhanced understanding. Finally, Nixari spoke again. "You will remain here while the council deliberates. Priestess Velari will show you to appropriate quarters." Her gaze shifted to include Keelan and Dax. "Your companions may explore the public areas of the temple under escort. The crystal will remain with us for examination." As the council session disbanded, Velari approached Auron, her patterns brightening subtly in a way he now recognized as pleasure despite her formal demeanor. "You've impressed them," she said quietly as she led him from the chamber. "Few outsiders have ever addressed the council in our formal tongue." "Will it be enough?" Auron asked. "That depends on what you truly seek here," Velari replied. "If you came expecting immediate answers or unquestioning acceptance, you will be disappointed. The Zealor have grown cautious after generations of decline and division." They walked through soaring corridors lined with living crystal, the architecture unlike anything found in human settlements, organic yet precisely engineered, beautiful yet clearly functional. Acolytes and temple workers moved about their duties, all pausing to observe Auron with undisguised fascination. "Where is Alara?" he asked, feeling the bond between them pulsing stronger now that they shared the same world. "I can sense her presence, but not her location. She undergoes the ritual of attunement," Velari explained, "a sacred preparation all royal children experience, especially important now, given the unique nature of her blood connection to you." She led him to a balcony overlooking a vast ceremonial garden. "You will see her soon. First, you should rest and acclimate to our world." Auron stepped to the balcony's edge, taking in the breathtaking vista of Celestine, crystal spires rising from lush vegetation, the three moons hanging low on the horizon, casting multiple shadows across the landscape. Despite its alien beauty, he felt an unexpected sense of belonging, as if some part of him recognized this place as significant. "It feels familiar," he admitted. "Through the Covenant, I suppose." "The Covenant connects you to our collective memory, our shared history," Velari confirmed, "but your experience remains uniquely your own, a human perspective on Zealor consciousness." She hesitated before adding, "That uniqueness may prove valuable in the coming crisis." Auron turned to her. "What crisis?" The council spoke as if the threat came only from Kaltor and Helix. Velari's patterns darkened with concern. "The progressive faction of our people, those who abandoned the traditional balance in favor of technological advancement, have learned of Alara's birth. They too seek her, believing her abilities could validate their path." She moved closer, lowering her voice. "Civil conflict threatens to reignite, with Alara at its center. The elders fear your presence might accelerate this confrontation." "Or provide a third perspective," Auron suggested, "one that recognizes the value in both approaches." A slight smile curved Velari's lips. "Perhaps. Such balance was once the foundation of our civilization, before extremes pulled us apart." Her silver eyes studied him with renewed interest. "Rest now, Guardian. Tomorrow, you will meet Alara properly and begin to understand what your covenant truly means for both our peoples." As Velari departed, Auron remained on the balcony, absorbing the peaceful sounds and scents of an alien world that somehow felt like a destination he'd been seeking his entire life. Through the bond, he sensed Alara's awareness of his arrival, her contentment, her recognition, her trust. For a man who had lost everything, his honor, his purpose, his place in society, this unexpected connection represented something he'd never thought to find again: belonging. Whatever trials lay ahead, whatever decisions the council might reach, he knew with absolute certainty that protecting Alara was now his life's purpose. And somewhere across the stars, he sensed that Kaltor was already planning his next move. The dream came with greater clarity than ever before. Auron found himself standing in a vast crystal chamber he'd never physically visited, yet recognized instantly from the memory crystal's knowledge: the heart of Celestine, the most sacred site in Xylor culture. Before him stood a female figure of imposing presence, her luminescent patterns more complex and brilliant than any he'd yet encountered. "Guardian," she addressed him, her voice resonating not through air but directly into his consciousness. "You have crossed stars to fulfill your covenant." "Who are you?" Auron asked, though part of him already knew. "I am Seraphine, High Priestess of the Xylor, last of the unbroken bloodline." Her form shifted slightly, becoming more distinct. "Alara's mother." Auron felt a surge of understanding. "You died in the attack on the transport ship." "My physical form was lost," she corrected, "but through the covenant rituals performed before my daughter's birth, aspects of my consciousness endure within the cosmic harmony." Her expression conveyed both sadness and determination. "I reach you now through your bond with Alara, to warn of what comes." The chamber around them transformed, showing visions of a massive fleet approaching Celestine, ships of Xylor design but altered, weaponized in ways that violated their traditional aesthetic. Leading them, a vessel that somehow combined Xylor crystal technology with the unmistakable industrial efficiency of human engineering. "The Shadowed Ones approach," Seraphine continued. "Our fallen kin who embraced power over harmony. They have formed alliance with your General Kaltor, exchanging knowledge of our technologies for his military expertise." The vision shifted to show laboratories where Xylor and humans worked side by side, creating hybrid weapons of devastating potential. They believe Alara represents validation of their path, proof that evolution requires abandoning tradition. They will take her by force if necessary. "When?" Auron demanded, military instincts surfacing. 3 cycles of our moons," she replied. "Time enough to prepare if the elders will heed your warning." Her form began to fade. "The meridian crystal you returned contains protocols to activate Celestine's ancient defenses, knowledge lost to the current generation of elders. You must convince them to trust what you have learned." As her presence diminished, Auron called out, "Wait! How can I protect Alara if both sides seek to use her?" Seraphine's voice came as merely an echo. "The child is not a weapon to be wielded, but a bridge to be built. Remember this when the moment of choice arrives." Auron awakened with a start, the luminescent patterns on his skin glowing brightly enough to illuminate the entire chamber. The dream, no, the vision, remained vivid in his mind, every detail preserved with perfect clarity. He rose immediately, knowing the urgency of what he'd learned. The corridors of the temple were quiet in the pre-dawn hours, but not deserted. Acolytes performing morning rituals paused in surprise as Auron passed, his determined stride and brilliantly glowing patterns marking him as a man on urgent business. He found Valari in the meditation garden, already awake and seemingly expecting him. "You've received the vision," she said simply, rising from her contemplative posture. "You knew?" he asked, momentarily taken aback. "Not its content, but its coming." she clarified. The High Priestess's essence has been reaching out through the cosmic harmony since Alara's birth, that you could perceive her message directly. She studied his luminescent patterns with newfound respect. The covenant grows stronger than any of us anticipated. We don't have time for theological implications, Oran stated firmly. The Shadowed Ones are coming, your progressive faction in alliance with Kaltor. They'll reach Celestine in 3 days, according to Seraphine. Vailari's patterns darkened with alarm. So soon, our defenses are minimal. Centuries of peace left us vulnerable. She paced the garden path, thinking rapidly. The council must be informed immediately. There's more, Oran added. The Meridian Crystal contains activation protocols for ancient defensive systems. Systems the current elders don't know how to access. How could you possibly? Vailari began, then stopped herself. The Blood Covenant, of course. It gives you access to knowledge even we have lost. Her silver eyes narrowed in thought. The traditionalists on the council will resist. Using such technologies, even defensively, contradicts their beliefs about maintaining spiritual purity over technological engagement. While the progressives went too far in the opposite direction, Oran observed, and now both extremes threaten Alara's future. The eternal dilemma of our people, Vailari agreed sadly, always pulled between these poles, never finding the balance we once cherished. A soft sound interrupted their exchange, a melodic chime that seemed to resonate with the crystal structures throughout the temple. Vailari's expression brightened immediately. The attunement ritual concludes, she explained. Alara awakens to her new awareness. Come, you should be present for this moment. They hurried through the temple complex, ascending to a ceremonial chamber Oran hadn't yet visited. Unlike the Grand Council Hall, this space was intimate, its walls lined with crystals that pulsed in gentle rhythm. At its center, a pool similar to those he'd seen before glowed with inner light, and floating above it in a sphere of energy was Alara. The infant's appearance had subtly changed since he'd last seen her. The luminescent patterns on her translucent skin had grown more defined, more complex, and her golden eyes seemed to hold even greater awareness. As Oran entered the chamber, those eyes fixed on him immediately, and through their bond, he felt a surge of recognition and joy. Without conscious thought, he approached the energy sphere, which lowered at his presence. Alara reached out with tiny hands, and as their fingers touched, the connection between them flared with unprecedented intensity. Images, emotions, and knowledge flowed between them, not just his to hers or hers to his, but a true communion of understanding. In that moment of connection, Oran comprehended what Alara truly represented, not just a genetic heritage or a prophesied savior, but a living embodiment of the balance the Zilor had lost. Her consciousness, still developing yet already complex beyond human comprehension, held the potential to bridge the divide between tradition and progress, between spiritual harmony and technological advancement. And she recognized him not just as protector or guardian, but as essential counterpart, the external perspective needed to help her navigate the polarized expectations of her people. The bond is complete. Elder Nixari's voice broke the moment of communion. She had entered with several other council members, all watching the exchange with varying degrees of wonder and concern. The attunement confirms what Vailari claimed. The human's connection to the child is genuine, unprecedented in our records. And potentially dangerous, added another elder, his patterns marking him as deeply traditional. Such intensity of connection between species was never intended in our traditions. Nor was it forbidden, countered a more moderate voice. The ancient texts speak of bridges between worlds, of wisdom found at the intersection of different ways of knowing. Oran gently disengaged from Alara, though their bond remained vibrant. He turned to face the council members, knowing the urgency of his message outweighed protocol. "Honored elders, I've received a vision from High Priestess Seraphine," he announced, causing an immediate stir among them. The Shadowed Ones approach Celestine in alliance with human military forces. They seek Elara and the power she represents. We have 3 days to prepare. Disbelief and alarm spread through the gathered elders, their patterns shifting rapidly as they processed this information. Nixari stepped forward, her expression grave. "You claim direct communion with the High Priestess's essence. Such communication is reserved for the most spiritually attuned of our kind, after decades of preparation and ritual. The blood covenant creates pathways none of us fully understand," Velari interjected, "and Auron carries knowledge from the Meridian Crystal, knowledge that may be crucial to our defense." "What knowledge?" Nixari demanded. "Activation protocols for Celestine's ancient defense grid," Auron replied. "Systems dormant for centuries that could be reawakened." The traditionalist elders' patterns flashed with alarm. Impossible. Those systems were decommissioned during the Great Renunciation, when our people chose spiritual elevation over technological warfare. To reactivate them would violate our most sacred principles. And to allow Elara to fall into the hands of those who would weaponize her gifts, Auron challenged. Would that not violate something even more fundamental? Tension filled the chamber as the elders' patterns shifted in complex dialogue too subtle for Auron to fully interpret. Finally, Nixari spoke again. "The council will convene immediately to consider this warning and determine our response." Her silver eyes fixed on Auron with penetrating intensity. "You will attend, Guardian, and share all you have learned from both the vision and the Meridian Crystal. The time for half-truths and partial revelations has passed." As the elders departed to prepare for the emergency session, Velari moved to Auron's side. "You forced their hand," she observed quietly. "For better or worse, they can no longer ignore the implications of your covenant or the threat it has revealed." Auron looked back at Elara, still floating serenely in her energy sphere despite the tension around her. Through their bond, he sensed not fear but curiosity, not apprehension but readiness. "She understands more than any of us realize," he said softly. "Even at this young age, she comprehends the forces converging around her." "The royal bloodline carries inherent wisdom," Velari confirmed, "but her development has accelerated beyond even our expectations. Your influence, perhaps—" Before Auron could respond, Keelan and Dax entered the chamber, both looking somewhat overwhelmed by their explorations of the temple. "The Silor acolytes are gathering supplies, preparing for something," Keelan reported. "What's happening?" Briefly, Auron explained the vision and the coming threat. Dax's scientific mind immediately grasped the implications. "A hybrid fleet combining Xylor crystal technology with human military engineering," she mused. "The applications would be revolutionary and potentially devastating. Kaltor must have found allies among the progressive faction even before Elara's discovery." "The question is how to defend against such a force," Keelan said, military training surfacing. "From what I've seen, this temple has minimal conventional defenses. It's protected by tradition and isolation, not fortification." "There are older defenses," Auron explained. "Systems from before the spiritual renunciation, but reactivating them requires the Council's approval and challenges their fundamental beliefs about technology's role in their society." Dax studied Elara with scientific fascination. "The child is the key, isn't she? Both sides want her because she represents legitimacy for their position. If she embraces technology, the progressives win. If she rejects it for spiritual tradition, the conservatives triumph." "She's not a symbol to be claimed," Auron said firmly. "She's a living being with her own destiny to fulfill." "A destiny you're now intrinsically part of," Dax pointed out, Your covenant has made you a player in their cultural conflict, whether you intended it or not. The truth of this observation settled heavily on Auron. When he'd shielded Alara from that energy blast, he couldn't have imagined the consequences, becoming bound to an alien child, drawn into an ancient cultural conflict, standing at the crossroads of two civilizations' futures. Yet through the bond, he felt Alara's absolute trust in him, her certainty that their connection was neither accident nor mistake, but essential to what lay ahead. Whatever role fate had thrust upon him, he would fulfill it, not for abstract principles or cultural validation, but for the child who had somehow become the center of his existence. "We should prepare," he said finally. "Regardless of the Council's decision, Kaltor is coming, and I know him well enough to expect he'll have contingencies for every defense we might mount." The council chamber hummed with tense energy as Auron completed his presentation. Using knowledge gained from the Meridian Crystal, he had detailed Celestine's ancient defense systems, a network of crystal amplifiers that could generate protective fields around the temple complex, weapon emplacements long dormant but still functional, and most controversially, a planetary shield that could prevent unauthorized vessels from approaching. The elders' reactions ranged from horrified rejection to reluctant consideration. Nixari, maintaining her position of balanced authority, allowed full debate before speaking. "For generations, we have maintained that our strength lies in spiritual harmony, not technological domination," she summarized. "To reactivate these systems, even defensively, represents a fundamental shift in our approach to existence." "With respect, Elder," Auron countered, "the original deactivation of these systems came after centuries of peaceful stability. Your ancestors could afford such philosophical purity because no genuine threats existed. That reality has changed." "You propose we abandon our principles at the first sign of danger?" challenged the traditionalist elder. "I propose you remember that those same ancestors created these defenses while maintaining their spiritual practices." Auron replied, "They understood that protection of their way of life sometimes required practical measures. The balance between tradition and innovation was once your people's greatest strength, not an either-or proposition, but a harmonious integration." Violari stepped forward, her position as priestess giving her voice special weight. "The ancient texts speak of cycles, periods of introspection followed by periods of engagement. Perhaps we have remained too long in the inward phase, and the coming of the Flame Child signals a return to balance." Murmurs passed through the council as they considered this interpretation. Nixari's patterns shifted in complex thought before she addressed Auron again. "Even if we were to accept this reasoning, activation of these systems requires protocols lost to us for generations. You claim the Meridian Crystal has provided this knowledge to you, an outsider, a human." "The crystal responds to the blood covenant," Auron explained. "Through my connection to Alara, I can access information stored within it, including these activation sequences." He hesitated before adding, "But there's a complication. The full activation requires royal bloodline authorization. In practical terms, that means Alara herself must be present for the final sequence." This revelation caused immediate concern among the elders. "You would expose the child to such technology, risk her corruption by these energies?" demanded the traditionalist faction. "The systems were designed specifically to respond to royal authorization," Auron countered. "They pose no danger to her. In fact, they recognize her essence as integral to their function." Debate continued for hours. The philosophical implications weighed against practical necessities. Throughout, Auron maintained his position calmly but firmly, drawing on both his military experience and his new understanding of Xylor culture to address concerns. Finally, Nixari called for a decision. "We face an unprecedented threat to our sanctuary and our future. while activation of the ancient technologies represents a significant departure from our current practice. The protection of the Flame Child must take precedence. She surveyed the council. Those in favor of limited reactivation of defensive systems under strict supervision? A majority of patterns brightened in assent, though several elders registered clear reservations. The traditionalist faction leader spoke for the minority. We accept the council's decision but warn against the path of compromise. History shows that once technological engagement begins, spiritual focus inevitably diminishes. May the harmony preserve us from our own choices. With the decision made, preparation began immediately. Auron, Keelan, and Dax worked alongside Xylor technicians to locate and reactivate the dormant systems. The process revealed an intricate network of crystal technology integrated throughout the temple complex and surrounding landscape, beautiful in design yet clearly functional in purpose. It's remarkable, Dax observed as they activated a major node in the defense grid. These systems were designed to enhance rather than detract from the aesthetic and spiritual properties of the environment, form and function in perfect harmony. That was their gift, Auron agreed, watching as long dormant crystals began to pulse with renewed energy. The ability to create technology that worked with natural systems rather than against them, something humanity could learn from. Keelan, more focused on practical concerns, studied the tactical displays that had begun to form above the crystal consoles. The defensive perimeter is establishing, but there are gaps in the coverage, particularly in the southern quadrant. If Kaltor has done his homework, he'll identify those weaknesses quickly. We'll need to position our limited forces to compensate. Auron decided. How many combat-capable Xylor remain in the temple? Fewer than 50 with warrior training, Valari replied, joining them at the control center. Our society has been peaceful for so long that martial skills have become ceremonial rather than practical. Then we'll need to be creative, Auron said, military strategist emerging. The temple's architecture itself provides defensive advantages if we use it properly, and these crystal amplifiers can be calibrated to disrupt certain weapon frequencies. As they worked, Auron maintained constant awareness of Alara through their bond. The infant remained in her protected chamber, attended by acolytes, her consciousness touching his periodically as if checking on his progress. Each contact strengthened his resolve to protect her, not just from physical harm, but from those who would use her as a symbol for their own purposes. By the second day of preparations, long-range sensors, another reactivated technology, detected the approaching fleet. As Seraphine had warned, it comprised both modified Xylor vessels and human military craft, an unsettling hybrid of technologies that confirmed Kaltor's alliance with the progressive faction. 16 ships in total, Keelan reported after analyzing the sensor data. 3 main cruisers and 13 support vessels. Conservative estimate puts their ground forces at several hundred combatants. Against our 50 warriors and handful of defensive emplacements, Valari said grimly, even with the ancient technologies, we are severely outnumbered. Numbers aren't everything, Auron reminded them. We have home ground advantage, superior knowledge of the temple's layout, and one element they can't match. He touched his chest, where the luminescent patterns glowed brightest. My connection to Alara gives us coordination they won't expect. As the final preparations were made, Elder Nixari summoned Auron to the sacred pool chamber, where Alara waited in her energy sphere. The elder's expression was solemn as she addressed him. Tomorrow, the enemy arrives. Tonight, you must complete the final activation sequence with the child. Her silver eyes held both concern and resignation. This represents our crossing of a threshold, Guardian. Once the royal bloodline engages with these technologies again, our path as a people changes irrevocably. Change was coming regardless, Auron replied gently. The question was never whether your civilization would evolve, but whether that evolution would honor your fundamental values or abandon them. Nixari's pattern shifted in what Auron had learned to recognize as thoughtful acknowledgement. Perhaps you understand our dilemma better than I credited. Very well, proceed with the activation. Vailari guided the ritual components while Auron focused on the technical aspects he'd learned from the Meridian Crystal. Together, they positioned Alara above the sacred pool, which now revealed itself as not merely ceremonial, but the central hub of Celestine's defense network. As Auron initiated the activation sequence, the pool's waters began to glow with increasing intensity. Crystal formations throughout the chamber responded, creating a harmonic resonance that vibrated at frequencies beyond normal hearing. Through the bond, he felt Alara's awareness expand, connecting with the ancient systems in ways even he couldn't fully comprehend. The infant's golden eyes widened, and for an instant, every crystal in the temple complex pulsed in perfect synchronization with her heartbeat. Power surged through the reactivated grid and across Celestine. Dormant defensive systems awakened fully, not with the harsh mechanical precision of human technology, but with an organic flow that seemed alive in its responsiveness. Through their bond, Auron sensed Alara's wonder at the connection, her instinctive understanding of systems designed to respond to her biological signature. There was no fear in her experience, no sense of corruption or endangerment, only recognition, as if recovering something always meant to be part of her heritage. "It is done," Vailari whispered as the energy stabilized. "The defenses are fully operational." Auron gently withdrew from the communion, allowing Alara to settle back into her normal awareness. As he did, he noticed something unexpected. The luminescent patterns on his skin had shifted again, now perfectly matching certain configurations in the temple's defensive grid. The Covenant had adapted, integrating him further into the systems they had just activated. "What does this mean?" he asked Vailari, showing her the new patterns. She studied them with wonder. "You've become a living key to the defense network. Like the royal bloodline, you can now interface directly with the systems." Her silver eyes met his. "The Covenant continues to evolve beyond anything in our recorded history." As Auron absorbed this new development, a temple acolyte rushed into the chamber, patterns flashing urgent alarm. "The fleet has accelerated. They will reach Celestine by dawn, not midday as predicted." Nixari's expression hardened with resolve. "Kaltor seeks to catch us unprepared. He will be disappointed." She turned to Auron. "Guardian, summon your companions. The time for preparation ends. The defense of Celestine begins." Dawn broke over the crystal spires of the temple complex. 3 moons still visible on the horizon as Celestine's sun crested the distant mountains. From his position at the central defense control, Auron watched as the enemy fleet entered orbit, their configurations confirming his worst fears. Xylor crystal technology had been weaponized, integrated with human military systems to create vessels of unprecedented capability. "They're deploying landing craft," Keelan reported, monitoring the sensor displays. "Multiple insertion points around the temple perimeter. Clever tactical approach. They're deliberately avoiding the strongest points in our defensive grid." "As expected," Auron replied. He had positioned their limited forces accordingly, using his knowledge of Kaltor's strategies from their military days. "Maintain shield integrity around the central temple. Let them land in the outer perimeter. The crystal amplifiers there are programmed to disrupt their weapon frequencies." Vailari joined them, her ceremonial robes replaced by the more practical attire of a Xylor priestess prepared for conflict. The elders have completed the spiritual shielding rituals. They will maintain communion with the cosmic harmony throughout the battle, strengthening our connection to the defense grid. Auron nodded, appreciating how the Xylor had integrated their spiritual practices with the reactivated technologies, not abandoning their traditions but enhancing them. It represented exactly the balance that both progressive and traditionalist factions had lost sight of in their ideological entrenchment. The first impacts against the outer shields came moments later, energy weapons firing from the landed craft, testing the ancient defenses. The crystal grid responded beautifully, absorbing and redistributing the energy in rippling patterns across the shield surface. "They're probing for weaknesses," Dax observed. "Standard military procedure, but these shields don't function like conventional energy barriers. They're adaptive, learning from each attack." Through his integrated connection to the defense network, Oran could feel the systems responding, adjusting frequencies to counter the incoming fire. More importantly, through his bond with Alara, he sensed her awareness of the battle, not frightened, but focused, her consciousness somehow enhancing the temple's defenses through ways he couldn't fully comprehend. "Ground forces advancing from landing zones," Keelan reported. "Mixed units, Shadow Corps operatives, and what appear to be Xylor warriors of the progressive faction. Unusual combination of technologies in their weapons and armor." Just as the memory crystal showed, Oran confirmed, this alliance has been developing for years, not months. Kaltor found willing partners among the progressives who believed humanity's technological drive complemented their own ambitions. The battle escalated quickly as the invading forces pressed toward the temple complex. Oran coordinated the defenders through the crystal communication network, positioning their limited warriors at critical junctures, while the automated defenses handled broader coverage. His military experience, combined with his new connection to Xylor systems, made him uniquely effective as battlefield commander. Hours into the conflict, with the outer perimeter under heavy assault but holding, a priority communication came through the network, Elder Nixari, her patterns signaling urgent concern. "Guardian, we've detected a specialized team approaching from the southern quadrant, using some form of technology that partially masks them from our sensors. They appear to be targeting the sacred pool chamber." Oran's blood ran cold. The sacred pool was not only the heart of the defense network, but also where Alara remained protected. "A surgical strike team," he realized aloud. "While the main force occupies our attention, this team goes for their primary objective." "Kaltor leads them personally," Nixari confirmed. "Our warriors are engaged elsewhere. We cannot redirect sufficient forces in time." "I'm going," Oran decided immediately. "Keelan, you have command of the defense grid. Dax, maintain monitoring of the main battle. Vailari, with me." They raced through the temple corridors, using passages Oran had memorized during preparations. Through his bond with Alara, he sensed growing distress, not panic, but awareness of approaching danger. The infant's consciousness reached for his. Seeking reassurance he struggled to provide while focusing on the immediate threat. They arrived at the sacred pool chamber just as explosions breached an adjacent wall. Through the billowing dust came the strike team, Shadow Corps operatives in their light-absorbing armor, flanked by Xylor progressives whose luminescent patterns had been modified with technological enhancements. Leading them, as Nixari had warned, was General Kaltor himself, now wearing a hybrid armor that incorporated crystalline components into human military design. "Saul," Kaltor acknowledged, his voice carrying the same authoritative tone Oran remembered from countless military operations. "Still playing the hero. I see, though your choice of allegiance remains questionable." "This isn't about allegiance, Kaltor," Oran replied, positioning himself between the strike team and Alara's energy sphere. "It's about preventing someone like you from weaponizing a child." "A child?" Kaltor laughed harshly. "That being represents evolutionary potential beyond anything in human history. Imagine soldiers with direct neural interface to their weapon systems, spacecraft controlled by thought rather than physical input, defensive systems that adapt instantly to any attack. At the cost of her freedom, her development, her very identity, Oran countered. A small price for species advancement, one of the Psi-lore progressives interjected. Our faction has long maintained that individual sacrifice for collective progress is the only path forward in a hostile universe. Violari stepped forward, her silver eyes flashing with controlled anger. You abandoned the balance that made our civilization great. Technology without spiritual harmony becomes merely efficient destruction. Witness your own transformation, patterns corrupted by mechanical augmentation, connection to the cosmic harmony severed for marginal tactical advantage. Pretty words from a dying tradition, the progressive replied dismissively. The child belongs with those who will nurture her true potential, not hide it behind ritual and superstition. Kaltor gestured to his operatives. Secure the infant, non-lethal measures only. The subject must remain undamaged. As the strike team advanced, Oran felt something shift within him, the luminescent patterns across his skin blazing with sudden intensity as his connection to both Alara and the defense network surged to unprecedented levels. Through their bond, he sensed not just her awareness, but her intent, her instinctive understanding of what needed to happen. Acting on this shared knowledge, Oran placed his hands on the crystal formations flanking the sacred pool. Immediately, energy coursed through him, the defense network responding to his interface in ways not even the memory crystal had prepared him for. The chamber itself came alive, crystal structures growing and shifting to create barriers between the attackers and Alara's position. Kaltor, recognizing the threat, fired his weapon directly at Auron, an advanced energy pistol that should have incapacitated any normal target. But the Covenant-enhanced connection had transformed Auron beyond normal human vulnerability. The energy blast dissipated across his luminescent patterns, absorbed and redirected into the defense grid. Impossible, Kaltor breathed, witnessing the transformation. Not impossible, Auron corrected, advancing toward the strike team as crystal formations continued to respond to his presence. Simply beyond your understanding, the true integration of technology and spiritual connection that both human and Xylar extremists have forgotten. The battle within the chamber intensified as Shadow Corps operatives deployed increasingly advanced weapons against the crystal defenses. Vailari joined the fight, her priestess training revealing combat applications of spiritual practices that took the attackers by surprise. Despite being outnumbered, the defenders held their position, their connection to the temple's systems providing advantage against superior firepower. Through it all, Oran maintained awareness of Alara, her consciousness intertwined with his as they coordinated defense of the sacred pool. What neither expected was Kaltor's final gambit, a crystal-based explosive device planted during the confusion of battle, designed to disrupt the energy systems, keeping Alara's sphere stable. If we cannot secure the subject, Kaltor announced coldly as he activated the device, we ensure no one else can utilize her potential. The explosion ripped through the chamber's energy fields, destabilizing the sacred pool and sending ripples of disruption through the entire defense network. Ilara's protective sphere fluctuated dangerously, its containment systems failing as the pool's energies surged chaotically. In that critical moment, Oran made the only choice possible, diving toward the destabilizing sphere. He reached for Alara with both physical hands and covenant bond, creating a direct connection between them as the protection systems collapsed completely. What happened next would later be recorded in Xylor history as the Communion of Flames. As Auron's body made contact with Alara's, their shared covenant ignited in spectacular fashion, luminescent patterns merging and expanding, creating a shield of pure energy that enveloped them both. The chaotic energies from the destabilized pool, instead of destroying them, were channeled through their bond, refined and redirected. Through their perfect communion, Auron experienced Alara's consciousness with complete clarity, not just an infant's awareness, but something far more complex, carrying ancestral memories and intuitive understanding of cosmic principles beyond human comprehension. And through him, she gained perspective on individual choice, on the value of balancing tradition with innovation, on the courage to forge new paths while honoring ancient wisdom. The energy sphere around them expanded, pushing back attackers and defenders alike as it grew to encompass the entire chamber. Within this protected space, a transformation occurred, Alara's essence temporarily merging with Auron's in a synergy that transcended physical limitations. Together, they reached out through the temple's crystal network, their combined consciousness touching every defender, every elder in meditation, every aspect of Celestine's ancient systems. Information flowed in perfect harmony, strategies adapted, defenses recalibrated, warriors coordinated with unprecedented precision. Beyond the sacred pool chamber, the tide of battle shifted dramatically. The defenders, suddenly operating with perfect coordination, pushed back against the invading forces. The defense grid, responsive to the combined consciousness flowing through it, sealed breaches and redirected energy with elegant efficiency. In orbit, the enemy fleet found their systems compromised by signals emanating from the temple, crystal technologies recognizing their corrupted configurations and initiating purification protocols built into their core designs. Ships lost power, weapons systems failed, communication networks dissolved into cosmic harmonics, too complex for hybrid controls to process. Within the chamber, Kaltor watched in disbelief as his carefully planned operation collapsed around him. The Shadow Corps operatives retreated from the expanding energy field, their weapons useless against its pulsing barrier. The progressive Xylor, witnessing the true potential of harmony between tradition and innovation, found their certainty shaken by what they observed, power beyond anything their technological adaptations had achieved, flowing from perfect communion rather than forced integration. As the energy field began to stabilize, Auron and Alara's merged consciousness separated gradually, returning to individual awareness while maintaining their strengthened bond. The infant floated gently into Auron's arms, her golden eyes meeting his with perfect understanding despite her physical youth. "It's over, Kaltor," Auron stated, turning to face his former commander. "You sought power through domination. What you've witnessed is power through harmony, the very thing you dismissed as superstition and weakness." Kaltor, his hybrid armor partially disabled by the energy surge, still maintained his military bearing. "One battle doesn't end a war, Sol. The potential remains too great, the advantages too significant to abandon." "Perhaps," Auron acknowledged, "but you'll pursue it without Alara. She's made her choice clear, as have I." Around them, temple guards arrived to secure the chamber and take the remaining attackers into custody. Reports filtered in through the crystal network, the invading forces in full retreat, the progressive faction ships withdrawing from orbit, the alliance between Kaltor's military ambitions and Xylor technological extremism crumbling in the face of what they had witnessed. Violari approached Auron and Alara, her silver eyes wide with wonder at what had transpired. "The prophecy spoke of the flame child bringing balance," she said softly, "but none interpreted it to include such communion with an outsider. You have rewritten our understanding of possibility." Auron looked down at Alara, who regarded him with that impossible awareness in her golden eyes. Through their bond, he sensed contentment, purpose, and something like amusement at the adult's surprise. "She knew," he realized aloud, "from the moment of our first connection, she understood what was possible between us." As the immediate crisis subsided, the full Council of Elders convened in the partly damaged chamber, their patterns showing complex emotions ranging from awe to concern. Nixari addressed Auron directly. What we have witnessed defies all precedent in our records. The communion between you and the child demonstrates possibilities our people had forgotten. The true integration of spiritual harmony and technological advancement. She gestured to the temple around them, where crystal systems continued to pulse with renewed energy. In defending our sanctuary, you have also shown us a path forward, one that honors tradition while embracing necessary evolution. The traditionalist elder stepped forward, his patterns now showing thoughtful reconsideration rather than rigid resistance. The ancient texts speak of guardians who would come when most needed, beings who bridge worlds and perspectives. Perhaps our interpretation was too narrow, too confined by our expectations. And our faction pushed too far in rejecting spiritual foundations, admitted one of the captured progressives, his enhanced patterns now stabilizing toward more natural configurations. We sought advancement without wisdom to guide it. Nixari's gaze returned to Auron and Alara. The question remains, what happens now? The covenant between you has transformed into something beyond our understanding. The child's development will follow no established pattern. And you, guardian, you are neither fully human nor truly Xylor, but something unique unto yourself. Auron considered this profound question, feeling Alara's consciousness touch his as he formulated his response. Now we build bridges, he said finally, between traditions and innovations, between species and civilizations, between past wisdom and future potential. He looked down at the infant in his arms, who gazed back with golden eyes full of ancient knowledge and new possibilities. Alara wasn't born to validate either extreme position in your cultural divide. She exists to transcend it, to demonstrate that true advancement comes through integration, not opposition. The days following the battle brought rapid changes to Celestine. The progressive faction, their alliance with Kaltor's forces, shattered, sent representatives to discuss reconciliation. The traditionalists, having witnessed the power of reintegrating technology with spiritual practice, began cautious exploration of their abandoned heritage. And throughout the temple complex, the renewed crystal systems continued to operate in harmony with both ancient rituals and modern needs. Kaltor himself, taken into Xylor custody, faced judgment from a joint council of covenant authorities and temple elders, his crimes against both civilizations too significant to ignore. His vision of forced advancement through weaponization rejected by those who had witnessed true integration. 1 month after what became known as the Battle of Celestine, Auron stood again on the observation platform where his journey had begun. Beside him, Velari held Alara, who had grown noticeably in both physical form and conscious awareness. Before them spread the crystal gardens of the temple's outer courtyard, where humans and Xylor now worked together, sharing knowledge and perspectives as they rebuilt damaged sections. The council has offered you permanent status as Alara's guardian, Velari said, breaking the comfortable silence between them, with all rights and responsibilities of a royal custodian. Auron smiled slightly, and the title of living god some of the acolytes have started using. Velari's patterns brightened in what he now recognized as amusement, cultural enthusiasm that will moderate with time, though your actions during the communion certainly qualified as miraculous by any reasonable standard. He looked at Alara, who regarded him with those golden eyes that somehow managed to convey ancient wisdom despite her infant form. Through their bond, he felt her contentment with the arrangement, her certainty that their paths were meant to remain joined. "I accept the guardianship," he said simply, "though I draw the line at temples in my honor." "Too late," Keelan interjected, joining them on the platform. "They've already commissioned a crystal statue for the western courtyard. Very heroic pose, very godlike." Dax followed, carrying research materials. "The scientific implications of your communion are revolutionary. The Council has approved my request to document the physiological changes in both of you, provided all research remains under Temple supervision. Oran shook his head in bemused acceptance of his new reality. From disgraced soldier to alien guardian to reluctant deity, a journey he could never have imagined when he first sought anonymity at the Sanctum of Stars. "What happens when she's grown?" he asked Vailari quietly, as their companions moved ahead, "when she no longer needs protection." Vailari's silver eyes met his with unexpected softness. "The covenant between you is lifelong, guardian. It will evolve as she does, changing in nature but not in fundamental connection." Her pattern shifted in what he had learned to recognize as affection. Besides, protection is only one aspect of guardianship. Guidance, companionship, shared purpose, these continue long after physical vulnerability ends. As if confirming this assessment, Elara reached out from Vailari's arms, tiny hands seeking contact with Oran. The moment their skin touched, their bond flared with familiar warmth, a communion of understanding that transcended words. Through it, he sensed not just her present contentment but her future vision, journeys yet to come, challenges still to face, a shared destiny unfolding across stars and years. "I guess we're just getting started," he said, smiling as Elara's patterns brightened in agreement. Together, they walked into the temple complex, the child of two worlds, her human guardian, and the priestess who had bound them together. Behind them, the three moons of Celestine rose on the horizon, casting multiple shadows that merged into one as they passed through the crystal archway, separate beings united in purpose, moving forward into a future where tradition and progress, spirituality and technology, alien and human no longer stood as opposites, but as complementary aspects of a greater harmony. And somewhere within the cosmic tapestry, the essence of High Priestess Seraphine observed with satisfaction as prophecy fulfilled itself in ways even she had not anticipated, through the unexpected guardian who had taken a bullet to shield an alien child, and in doing so, changed the destiny of two civilizations.